during the commercial break, I gathered the Danettes together and I said, should we play something that Mannix said back in September about the Lakers? And it was universal. Everybody said yes. So this is what Mannix said about the Lakers.
You know, I get killed every year talking about the Lakers with you because I tend to be more skeptical as I was last season. But is it not more likely that the Lakers miss the playoffs than win a championship? I think that.
Wait, this
feel
year?
that way right now. This year.
So the odds are better that they miss the playoffs than they win the championship?
I would say so, yes.
Wow. Okay. Let's bring in Chris Mannix, who joins us from the bubble. Do you stand by that?
Kind of impossible to stand by that, Dan.
I was just trying to give you an out there.
No. I mean, at the time, Lakers were, bringing in a bunch of new players. I know Anthony Davis was one of them. At the time, LeBron James was coming off the most significant injury of his career. It seemed more likely that they missed the playoffs.
You don't have to defend yourself. I'm just having fun. You're a great sport. You're a great sport.
I'd like to defend myself because it stood true back then. It was. I think that was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was like late September, early October.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
like that. Come on, It's not even one of my greatest hits. Like that's not even.
Oh, it's not. Oh
no.
Well, Paulie, can we cue up some of Mannix's greatest hits here?
You have to be more specific.
Do you think this is it for Greg Popovich?
It's a tough call. I mean, he didn't leave any breadcrumbs last night after the game. There's long been an assumption that Popovich would be done after the 2020 Olympics. Obviously, those didn't happen right now. So perhaps we could see him coach one more year and then ride off into the sunset after the Olympics in 2021. But, next year is very cloudy, Dan. Like, what's going to happen with the start of the season? I mean, there was some reporting by ESPN this week that Michelle Roberts, who I spoke to last week, told the players that be prepared for a start time in January or in March. Will Popovich look at that and say, look, I got a team that's not a contender. I want to coach in the Olympics no matter what. Do I walk away and hand the reins off to somebody else? So even though he didn't, say he was done now, I think there'll be a lot of thought into going into that over the next few months.
And I thought he positioned Becky Hammond to take over for him. And I talked to Nancy Lieberman, the Hall of Famer, about this. And then he brings in Tim Duncan. Does Tim Duncan want to be a head coach?
I don't get that sense. I don't get that sense that Tim Duncan wants. I think Tim Duncan likes the coaching part. I don't think he likes everything else that goes along with it, which includes media responsibilities and maybe the politics of being a head coach as well. I'm not sure it would be Becky Hammond either. I mean, I think there are a lot of ex-Spurs out there that are part of the Popovich coaching tree. What happens if Brett Brown gets let go in Philadelphia? They've got a very close relationship, Pop and Brett Brown. Ime Udoka was an assistant coach on Pop's staff before going to Philadelphia. He's very highly regarded as Brett Brown's lead assistant. So I think the current staff would be candidates, but I think they'd extend the search pretty far.
Woj just announced that the Bulls have fired Jim Boylan. It felt like a long time coming, and it felt like if you didn't fire him, you were going to have a player revolt. I mean, where have the Bulls been since Michael Jordan left?
I mean, in a perpetual state of rebuilding with one misstep after another. Now, they've been pretty decent at drafting over the years. Derrick Rose was a slam dunk, but, they got Jimmy Butler late in the first round. And, Joakim Noah was drafted when nobody thought he was going to be the player he turned out to be. But with free agency, with some of these coaching hires, it just hasn't gone their way. And look, it's curious that it took them this long. The explanation that was given to me about why the Bulls were waiting this long on Jim Boylan was that there was only one other coaching opening, and they weren't going to hire the team that was going to the coach the team was going to hire. That was Tom Thibodeau in New York. So they didn't feel a sense of urgency. There may be more urgency now, Dan. One of the reasons I think that the timing of this is right now is because you have teams going home, and you've got the Pelicans going home. And other teams will be bowing out, and there could be coaching changes on those staffs. The Pelicans, widely believed to at some point will let go of Alvin Gentry. Philadelphia, Brooklyn's going to have an opening at some point. Maybe the Bulls wanted to get started on their search now to try to get a jump on some of these other teams.
Yeah, I was just talking about the Pelicans, and McLovin said, who would you invest in right now if they were stocks, the Pelicans or the Suns? And I actually paused and said, I might go with the Suns. First of all, I love their coach, and Booker has taken that next step. I don't know how good they are as a team moving forward, but there's less drama in Phoenix than the potential drama that you have in New Orleans. Lonzo Ball mailed it in. Brandon Ingram, restricted free agent. Zion's health is always going to be an issue, and you might be firing your coach. Other than that, so who would you invest in?
To me, it's 6-1 and pick them there. I mean, I like the Suns because I think Devin Booker has shown in these seeding games and this season in general that he can be a franchise player. I'd like the Suns more if they had drafted Luka Doncic and not drafted DeAndre Ayton in that spot. I'm not a huge Ayton guy. I've watched him pretty closely as the Suns have made this rise. He's a little passive around the rim. He doesn't have great hands. There's something about him that I think has a bit of a ceiling, and that would give the Suns a ceiling. But you're right about Monty Williams. He's going to be the coach of the seeding games, as the NBA is going to hand out those awards in the next couple of days. The issue I have, the reason I would lean towards the Pelicans. Look, Zion was hurt this year, but how many guys have we seen hurt in their first or second years? I mean, Joel Embiid missed like 2 full seasons, and then he was just fine. I think Zion's going to be okay, and I'm a big believer in Brandon Ingram. I mean, Brandon Ingram is a star on the rise.
I love him. But is he going? What's he going to cost you? Well,
I mean, going to stay? He's a max. No, he's a max guy on the second contract. Everybody's a max guy on the second contract. That is like around that range, and that second contract isn't enormous by NBA standards. So. Those two guys I like more long term than Booker and Ayton as a twosome.
We're talking to Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated NBA senior writer. You were there to watch the Blazers and the Nets. I've been giving credit to the Nets because those guys are playing hard. This is their chance to showcase, and they did not stop. The Blazers, I know you're high on the Blazers. You were on that bandwagon before anybody else. It feels like they're limping towards the finish line, and they looked exhausted last. I wouldn't be surprised if Memphis won the first game between these two. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Well, I mean, first, quickly on the Nets, like I walk past them at their practice all the time. I was in their practice. I could name like 4 guys off the top of my head that are on that team. Yeah. And it's like the guys that have been around, Joe Harris and Jared Allen. What Jacque Vaughn did with this group going 5-3 is nothing short of David Copperfield-like magic. I mean, it's incredible the job he did there. The Blazers, I liked seeing CJ McCollum get off last night. The way he was playing after having a real struggle in the previous game and the report coming out about the broken back, to see him play that way gave me a little bit more encouragement about the Blazers in the playoffs. But they don't defend anybody, and they haven't really defended anybody throughout these 8 seeding games. Nurkic makes a lot of mistakes at that 5 spot. I don't think the Grizzlies can give them a lot of trouble. I mean, the Grizzlies got in because Giannis headbutted Moritz Wagner, and then they were missing him and didn't have anything to play for Milwaukee. I don't think they take that game off. I think the Blazers get in, but I'm far less bullish on Portland's chances to upset the Lakers now than I was maybe at the start of this when they were fully healthy. And they were looking like a team on the rise. I just think the McCollum injury bothers me. And as several coaches have said to me when I've raised this question to them in the bubble, who defends LeBron? Yeah. Like you can say all you want about the backcourt and the front court. Who defends LeBron? It's an interesting storyline, Dan, because I mean, Carmelo versus LeBron and perhaps Carmelo's last chance to do something meaningful in the postseason. But I don't know how they pull that off.
But you got Lillard and McCollum and Anthony and Gary Trent Jr. Those guys are among the top 6 guys as far as minutes played. And now you're going into at least you got one more game, maybe a couple games here with Memphis, and then you go in against the Lakers. And you're right about, the Lakers haven't been shooting well, but the Blazers might be just what they need to go against a team that doesn't play defense.
It's true, but I mean, the Lakers have been getting open looks. I mean, some of the games I've been at, like these looks the Lakers are getting are open. They're just missing them. And J.R. Smith, I think he's shooting like 16% from 3-point range. And you're going to rely on Dion Waiters and some of these other guys to make shots. I mean, they're really vulnerable at this stage. Maybe not in the first round, but outside of, you heard LeBron say after the game where Kyle Kuzma made that game-winning three, like he's like, we need him to be our third best player. I mean, they need a consistent Kyle Kuzma to win anything in this whole thing. You know what you're going to get from LeBron. AD's been great as well, but they need Kuzma to be efficient, to score 15 to 20 points. And if they don't get that, they're vulnerable to any team in this bracket.
I think AD has to be superstar. He's got to be the best player on the floor. I think Kuzma has to look like an all-star, and LeBron is going to fill in the gray area there. But that's asking a lot. It really is, because I still look at the Clippers and say, it feels like the Clippers are exactly where they want to be. We're not really talking about them. They don't make headlines. They're going to have everybody together, and it feels like Doc may have something here, and he knows it too.
Well, the Clippers, to me, are going to be a test of, can you flip that proverbial switch? I think they'll win that first-round matchup handily against the Mavericks, because Dallas is just limping into the playoffs right now with the way they're playing. But beyond that, you mentioned the guys, they have all their guys back, but they're just getting them back. They're just trickling in. Montrezl Harrell, a front runner for sixth man, is going to make his debut tonight, for the Clippers. So, getting these guys up to speed and on the same page on the fly when you're basically playing every other day is going to be a challenge. Now, it's a challenge that is a little bit more, manageable when you have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who's played well during this run up. But chemistry matters, continuity matters, and the Clippers haven't had any of it, for the better part of the last month. So if they get a tough matchup in that second round, I think they're vulnerable as well.
And the East looks like a mess. The first round matchups doesn't look like there's any surprises in store there, right?
No, probably not. But I think it gets fascinating when you get past that. It's strange to say, but the way Milwaukee's kind of been up and down, and Giannis has been frustrated throughout this whole process, you almost have to make the Raptors a co-favorite right now, which is the most remarkable thing you could possibly say. Like, you mentioned my idiot comment back in September about the Lakers. Like, the idea that the Raptors could be sitting here as a conference contender, as a potential co-favorite to go to the finals, is insane. This team, and I've been watching them a lot down here in the bubble, and some of the observations are that they're an incredibly smart team, like a high IQ team from like 1 to 10. Like, they make the right play way more often than not. And when I talk to Raptors executives there, the one thing they often say is that Kawhi Leonard's gone, but Kawhi Leonard still lives with this team. Like, the mental toughness that Kawhi instilled on these young guys like OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet, like, that still lingers with this team. And that's actually something that's going to help them as they get into the playoffs. So they've got questions too. Can Siakam make that leap in the postseason? Can VanVleet make another jump in the postseason? But the way the Bucks have played, I think they're vulnerable as well. And the Raptors might be the team, because of their size, that could be the one that takes them out.
I love what the Heat have done. I love what Pat Riley's done with that. It's really amazing when you think, Wade retiring, LeBron leaves, Bosh has to retire, and all of a sudden he just starts to get a couple of draft picks, and out of bio, came out of nowhere. It felt like Jimmy Butler there wants to be there and play with that team. Duncan Robinson they find. Tyler Hero. It's an interesting team. I don't know if it's a great team, but boy, Pat Riley did a great job. He did. He did. And how you build successful teams is hitting on those mid-round picks and further back, right? You're supposed to hit on those top-level picks. But what they've done with Tyler Hero, what they've done with Bam Adebayo, who's going to be the most improved player this year, Duncan Robinson, undrafted. You watch Duncan Robinson play, and you're looking around like, what did people miss with this guy? He's like 6'8" and makes threes and has that kind of mindset where he always wants the ball. So what did teams miss with that guy? The one, where the Heat missed, and where I'm sure, and I know that the Heat front office and the coaching staff think about this all the time, especially down here in the bubble,
was, and I forget, was it the 2015 draft when they drafted Justice Winslow and they could have had Devin Booker? They loved Devin Booker. He had an unbelievable workout for them down in Miami, and there was a big split within that organization about Devin Booker over Justice Winslow. If they had Devin Booker right now, Dan, we'd be looking at the Heat in a whole new light. We mentioned Doncic. That's a recent example, but Booker Winslow, I mean, that's a big turning point for an organization.
All right, so make a prediction here.
Oh, great.
Paulie, are we rolling on this?
Always.
Okay. All right.
I am going with Raptors, Clippers in the finals.
Raptors, Clippers. Didn't sound definitive on that.
It's just so weird down here, Dan, the way teams are playing and the vulnerabilities of these top seeds that I didn't see before. Simple as that. Like the Lakers, they're kind of shooting like I thought they'd shoot the pre-pandemic season. And the Bucks, they look great in the exhibition games, and I was bullish on them then. And then they come into the seeding games and don't play quite as well. And Giannis looks a bit out of sorts. I just every time I watch the Raptors, and they've gotten blown out, I think at least once during these games. But every time I look at the Raptors, they look the most locked in of any team in this bubble. And I just got to think that counts for something.
Are you going stir crazy? We've seen some of the players, it feels like, going stir crazy.
Oh, no. Well, I have no life. What else would I be doing?
Are
right?
you allowed to bring in somebody who's a friend, or is that just basketball players who are allowed to do that?
Yeah, I'm actually scrolling Instagram as we speak to see what's happening there. No.
You're
players,
okay.
Coaches can't do it either. So it's players only.
Players only.
I love this, and you've talked about the memo, I'm sure. But like, as one GM said to me, like he said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but he's like, when it comes to this, players are playing chess and the NBA is playing checkers. You're going to see an interesting looking Aunt Thelma coming into coming into this bubble. Like,
well, it can't be any more embarrassing than what happened to that Seattle Seahawk, where he had his girlfriend dress up as a player and tried to sneak him by security.
It's also kind of stupid, Dan, because like as long as these whoever comes in, no matter what they are, family member, short time girlfriend, like as long as they are tested, who cares who they bring in? Like if you allow them to bring in whoever they want, as long as they go through the protocols, that prevents them from doing something crazy like what you're talking about. That prevents them from going to the golf course and then having, 3 people on the 9th hole and then 4 on the 10th hole as somebody, comes scrambling in, off the green. So I just think as long as they're being tested, who cares, who or what relationship they have with the people that come in.
Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you again, Chris.
You got it, Dan.
That's the popular Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated NBA senior writer, joining us from the bubble.